Welcome to the Podcast Guesting Masterclass. I am so excited to be here with you this week. I am Jessica Rhodes. I am the founder of Interview Connections, and I'm here to teach you live this week how to get clients and build your brand with podcast guesting. So if you are done being the best kept secret, I want you to type yes in the chat right now. We grew our company, Interview Connections, to its first seven-figure year back in 2019 without any paid advertising. We had a very tiny social media presence and a very small email list, mostly just of our clients. And the way we grew to that point was through networking, through relationship building, and our primary strategy was podcast guesting. So quick reminder or update, you will have access to the replays until Friday, December 19th at midnight. So you have all of this week and all of next week. So if you're not able to be here live for any of the sessions this week, make sure you schedule in time to watch it before Friday, December 19th. This is special. I used to only give 1 week of access to the replays, but it's the holiday season. It's December. I don't want you to miss these sessions. So your holiday present from me is that you're going to get a whole extra week built in to watch the replays, which is very exciting. So give me a yes if you're excited about that. All right. My name, again, is Jessica Rhodes. In 2013, 12 years ago, I started booking my dad, who is a business coach. His name is Jim Palmer, as a guest on podcasts because I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I had a newborn, Nathan. He is 12 right now. I have a daughter named Lucy, who is 10 years old. And when I was pregnant with Nathan, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I was working at a nonprofit before, and my dad showed me how to start a virtual assistant business. And he had previously been traveling to seminars and conferences to gain visibility to his target market, but all of that traveling was tiring and it was expensive. And getting interviewed on podcasts was the key to him growing his business without the hassle or the hustle of traveling to events all over the country or worrying about the social media algorithm or keeping up with trends, which back in 2013, there wasn't so much trends because we weren't having like TikTok and Reels. But I want you to give me a yes in the chat if you really don't want to try to keep figuring out social media. It is like a battle you just have a hard time figuring out how to win. I can definitely relate to that. Um, Getting interviewed on podcasts was really the key for my dad. Again, this is back in 2013. It was the key to him growing his business and getting new leads and new sales without having to travel, without having to be super strategic on social media. He could just connect with people directly, have conversations, and it just naturally led into a lot of great coaching clients. And just a few months after I started my business as a virtual assistant, booking my dad on podcasts, I decided to really focus and go all in on podcast booking as a service because I looked around. Nobody else was offering it as a service. PR companies weren't booking on podcasts because it was still such a small and new form of media. And there were no podcast booking agencies. So I launched the world's first ever podcast booking agency, interviewconnections.com, in 2013. And I started getting my clients on podcasts. I was working with podcast hosts to book great guests for their show. And it really, really took off. I grew a whole team of guest bookers and later transitioned into having a model with full-time employees. And what I'm teaching you this week, it's not theory. It's not regurgitated information from other experts or books I've read. It is truly what we have learned from booking over 50,000 podcast interviews over the last 12 years. We've worked with over 1,000 clients who are small business owners, entrepreneurs, subject matter experts who use podcast guesting as a way to get visibility to their target market. So give me a yes if you're excited for this masterclass. And if you haven't already, put in your goals for podcast guesting. This is a really important first step to this strategy and having success. It's knowing why you're doing it and really stating what your goals are for podcast guesting. So put that in the chat. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the sessions this week because I'm going to be live with you this exact time, 12 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Thursday of this week. Today is the secret to getting clients from podcast guesting. This is probably why most of you are here. It's to get visibility to new audiences and attract dream clients to your business. So this session is going to teach you all about that. Tomorrow, I'm going to teach you the art of being an unforgettable podcast guest. In order to get clients from podcast interviews, you do, spoiler alert, need to be a great guest. You can't just do podcast interviews and not nail it and expect to get clients. So we're going to go over how to be an unforgettable podcast guest that is invited back, that has people reaching out and saying, I heard you on this podcast. Will you come on my podcast? Session 3, I'm going to teach you all about repurposing your podcast interviews. This is something that we do for our clients at Interview Connections. We'll actually take your interviews and repurpose them into clips. And I'm going to teach you all about how to do that in session 3. So you can take your podcast appearances and turn them into dozens of pieces of content online. And then session 4, this could be you. We are going to share with you podcast guesting success stories from some of our most successful clients who have taken a new coaching business and turned it into a multiple 6-figure company just by being a guest on podcasts. So that is what the sessions look like. Again, the replays are going to be up until Friday, December 19th. So you have a full 2 weeks to watch if you're not able to be here live. All right, we are going to get started. So let's dive in. So the 3 main ways to get clients as a podcast guest fall into these 3 buckets. Number 1, you want to write these down, the host of the show. And I'm going to go through each of these ways, why they work, and how it works so you can implement right away in your business. So number 1, it's the host of the show. Number 2, it's their audience. And then number 3, your own audience. It's not just about other people's audiences. There is a way that you can leverage podcast guesting to get clients from your existing following. All right. So write that down. The host, the audience of the show, and your own audience. So let's first talk about the host of the show. How can you get clients by way of the host who's interviewing you? So number 1, why does this work? Podcast hosts are influential people. They own their media. If you're a podcast host and you have a show, you have an owned media strategy. You have a dedicated audience of people who are listening to you. So when you're a guest on a podcast, you are in a conversation, the podcast interview, with somebody who has influence with a group of people, with whether it's 100, 500, or 10,000 people are listening to them and trusting their guidance and what they're saying. These podcast hosts are also business owners. They're successful entrepreneurs who are investing in growing their brand through having their own podcast. And they are incredibly well connected. Podcast hosts are some of the most connected entrepreneurs you'll ever meet. Write that down. Podcast hosts are some of the most connected entrepreneurs you'll ever meet, because if they are having an interview-based podcast where they're interviewing people on a weekly basis, they're interviewing at least 52 experts every single year. So they probably have someone to introduce you to for any desire that you have. You're looking for somebody who could design a website or connect you with a social media company or with an ads company. If you're on a business podcast, that host probably has a referral for anything that you're looking for. They're very, very well connected. All right. And they also are well connected to speaking opportunities. Our client, Jonathan Porter Wisman, is an author. He's a serial entrepreneur. He has multiple SaaS tech companies. And one of the podcast hosts, actually multiple podcast hosts that interviewed him, also introduced him to live speaking opportunities. So I want you to say speaker in the chat if you are a speaker and one of your goals as a podcast guest is to get connected to speaking opportunities. So type speaker in the chat if you're a speaker and you want more speaking opportunities. People always ask, like, how do I get speaking opportunities? I can't find any good speaker bureaus. Get on podcasts. When you get on podcasts, you are demonstrating your speaking abilities. You're demonstrating yourself as a storyteller, and you're in conversation with podcast hosts who probably have opportunities for speaking. There are also podcast hosts who organize conferences and events. Our client, Timothy Wingate Jr., is a construction accountant. And so we booked him on over 30 different podcasts that are business related in the construction industry. And one of the hosts of the show also organizes an in-person conference and hired Timothy as a paid speaker for his conference. So not only did Timothy get a great podcast interview, but he also got booked to speak at this event, like all expenses paid, flew him and his wife out. He spoke. He was just rushed to the back of the room after he spoke and got tons of leads and sales. This is all because he made an investment to get booked on podcasts, made the right connections, was a great guest, and his business absolutely took off. That could be you if you invest and get yourself on podcasts. So how do you do this, right? How do you get more clients and speaking opportunities by way of the host of the show? So number one, it's about strategically getting on the right podcast. You need to be on podcasts where the host actually is somebody that would have those connections, actually is somebody that's a successful business owner or ideal client for you. So that comes in the targeting. And that's why it's good to work with a booking agency like Interview Connections, because we do all that work for you. We have a whole database where we're able to know who the right hosts are for you based off of your goal. And it's good to know who your ideal client is. So put it in the chat. Who is your ideal client? Who do you want to attract to your business? Is it someone going through a transition in their life and you're, a coach who can help them with that? Is it a business coach and you're going to help them, grow their business to get more clients? Like put it in the chat. Who is your ideal client? Because knowing that is a very important step in getting booked on podcasts where the host could maybe be somebody that is that client or is able to connect you with that type of client. Before the interview, these are some just actionable steps and tips that you can implement today. Build a genuine relationship with the host before the interview. A big pitfall and mistake that a lot of podcast guests make is they get booked for an interview and then they have it on their calendar. Their assistant puts it on their calendar and they're like, great, I'm going to do that interview in 3 weeks. And nothing happens before that interview. As soon as you're booked for an interview, go to the host LinkedIn, send them a connection request, add a note, say, hey, I just booked an interview with you. I'm really excited. It's on my calendar. I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, start getting to know each other. Follow them on Instagram, maybe comment on some of their posts. Read their bio. Are they on other podcasts as a guest? Maybe listen to them as a guest on somebody else's podcast so you can really get to know them. Start right away nurturing your relationship with that host because you're going to break the ice, build rapport with them. So when you're on their podcast, it's not this like awkward getting to know each other for the first time. I don't know about you, but I rarely make an investment and hire somebody if I don't feel like I know them, right? So listen to them on podcasts, get to know them. And once they feel like you are in a good relationship with them, they're just much more likely to want to go deeper with you in that interview. Connect with the host on social media. This is so important to do. Make sure you're connecting with them, listen to their podcast, read their bio, listen to their show before the interview, and then make the most of the green room chat. So who here has ever heard of the term, the green room? Like just put a yes in the chat or type green room if you know what I'm talking about. And maybe it's in the sense of like, if you go to a theater and you're backstage, right? The green room is like the backstage. So if you're on a podcast, the green room is the time that you are talking with that host before they hit record. All right. So this is where business happens. This is where business happens. Yes, the interview is a super important part of the podcast guesting strategy, but where a lot of our clients that we represent and that we get booked on podcasts, they are having conversations with the host off air in the green room that leads to leads, sales, speaking opportunities, referrals, and other opportunities for JV partnerships. It's all about the green room. So don't bypass that green room and don't bypass the pre-calls too, because the pre-call is another opportunity to have that backstage off the record conversation that can lead to a lot of opportunity. Be really intentional about the questions that you're asking in the green room. Our client, Isaac Ho, is a sales trainer and a business coach, and he's really brilliant at, in those green room chats, asking the host, like, why did you start your podcast? Tell me about yourself. Tell me about why you started your show. And by asking why they started their podcast, he learns so much more about what the intention behind the podcast was. And sometimes that answer will uncover pain points that the host has in their business. And then if it does, then Isaac might say, I think I could really help you with that. If you'd like to schedule another call, like this is not a sales call, no pressure, but I'd love to give you some pointers or, just see if I could help at all. So when you ask the host about themselves, ask them why they started their podcast, if they share something and you think, I'm a coach and I could help them. Like I know I could help them. Tell them that. Tell them I think I could really help you. And not in a salesy way, but just genuinely say, I think I could really help you. And if you can and they really feel that, they'll want your help. And so book that other call. So really get to know the host in the green room, in the pre-call, and go for it. When you feel like there's alignment, go for it. You can also ask the host if they want to be a referral partner. I do this all the time because my team will book me on podcasts. And sometimes the host will have said, like, oh, I've interviewed your other clients or I listened to your podcast. Like, you guys are amazing. I love interview connections. And I'll say, great. Do you want to be a referral partner? We can give a special link. So anyone in the audience who becomes our client, I'll give you a commission. So there's also opportunities to ask the host to become a referral partner so they can monetize their interview with you, and it just motivates them to want to refer business to you. So which of these tips are you going to implement? Is it the green room chat? Is it listening to, like, connecting with them on LinkedIn? Is it asking them to be a referral partner? I just gave you a bunch of stuff and we're only 20 minutes in. So make sure you're writing these down, and I want to see you implementing this right away. During the interview, when you're actually being interviewed, be a great guest. Obviously, you're going to be a great guest. You're not going to be pitching anything and trying to sell to their audience. You're going to be sharing stories. You're going to be giving actionable advice. So the host and the listeners feel that they can get so much value, even if they don't pay for your services. That's what you want for free content. You want it to be so mind-blowingly amazing that the listeners and the host are like, oh my gosh, if I got this much value just from a free podcast interview, I can only imagine how much more I'll get from working with you. And we'll talk more about that in tomorrow's session, how to be an unforgettable podcast guest. And then after the interview, share the interview with your audience. You want to help that host grow their audience by sharing the interview with your audience. We'll talk more about repurposing your podcast interviews in session 3. And again, that's something that's included in our service at Interview Connections. You're going to continue building your relationship with this host. Don't let it be a one and done thing. Maybe have a touch point where, whether it's every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you can decide what cadence makes most sense for you, but stay in touch with that host because this is somebody that is influential. They have an audience. They interviewed you. So don't forget about them. Stay in touch with them on social media. Maybe book a check-in call with them every so often to build that relationship. You never know what type of JV partnerships can come out of your relationships with the podcast hosts. So that is number 1. Give me a yes in the chat if you're excited to be a podcast guest just to connect with these influential podcast hosts, because so much can come when you simply just focus on your relationship with the host of the show. Awesome. All right, we're going to keep this party going. And now focus on the audience of the show. This is probably the most obvious way people think about getting clients from podcast guesting. It's from the audience, from the listeners. I'm going to have the listeners hear me and reach out and become a client. And why does it work? It's because it's long form content. It's an opportunity for these listeners to hear you speak for 30 to 45 minutes. It's typically unedited, so they can just hear your full personality, hear the full context of all of the stories that are being shared. Most of the time when you hear a clip on social media, it's out of context. It's out of context. You don't know what was said before or after that little story, but when you hear a podcast, you really feel like you get a deep dive and you have the full understanding, which leads to more trust. And that's the key. For people to want to work with you, they have to trust you and feel like they fully understand who you are, the value that you can bring them, and that you have the right information that they're looking for. Podcast audiences are also very warm because they're targeted, and they're very qualified because they're targeted. There's so many different specific podcasts out there. You can get really, really niche. I mean, look at our show, the Interview Connections podcast. It is a show about podcast guesting for business owners who feel like the best kept secret. It's a very niche podcast. It's very specific. Most podcasts are that way. They're not general mass marketed. They're very specific to either a specific type of person or a specific problem or about a specific type of story that the host likes to share. And so when you go on podcast, you have a very specific and targeted audience. So you're not just casting a wide net and seeing what comes back. You're going right to the correct audience. And the audience also is more likely to want to work with you than someone on social media is because you're giving them so much value before you ever ask for something in return. Before they get to the end of that hour-long podcast where you invite them to go to your website and schedule a call with you, you will have already given them so much value. You will have given them emotions. They will have connected to emotions by hearing your story and by hearing you speak. They will get value from the information that you share and the tips that you give. So by the time they hear you invite them to your website, they're like, yes, they feel connected with you. So, how do you do this? Now, just like with the host, you need to get in front of the right people. You need to go on the correct podcast by knowing what your goals are and who your target audience is. Targeting the correct podcast is a huge part of this strategy. And more isn't more. It's not a numbers game in the way that the bigger the podcast, the more the results. All the time we see our clients who maybe they got on a really big show, but they're like, that didn't necessarily have more of an ROI than the show with 500 people. That was all really super targeted, where a lot of the listeners actually know the host personally. So the trust is a lot higher. So it's not a vanity metrics game. It's about really being targeted and specific with the types of audiences that you're speaking to. Be consistent with podcast guesting. This is a strategy where the more podcasts you get on over time, the bigger the snowball grows, the more honed in your messaging gets, the more effective you are as a guest, and the more you learn about which types of audiences move the needle the most for you. And the more you can tweak, like what types of calls to action work best. I've been doing podcast guesting for 12 years, and I've had several different calls to action that I will give on podcasts. I've given lead magnets. I've given just go to our website. I've said book a consultation call. And I learn through the results which CTA works best for our ideal client. But I can't test that if I do 5 interviews and then call it a day. I need to do hundreds over the course of multiple years to figure out like which strategy works the best. Be a great guest and give value. That is a reminder I'll just give all week. You've got to be a great guest. You've got to give value. You have to come from a place of service and wanting to connect and wanting to give value. People feel that energy, and that's what makes them want to connect with you. If they feel like you're just trying to sell something to them, they'll be repelled. Now, having a strong call to action is an important part of this strategy, but it's not something that you should overthink, and it's not something that should cause you to wait to start getting on podcasts, because actually most of our clients who see a really amazing return on their investment are just sending people to their website where they can book a call or opt into their email list. But I want to give you some examples of calls to action that really work in converting people who hear you on a podcast onto your email list. So I mentioned Timothy Wingate already because he got a great speaking opportunity and a lot of clients from podcast guesting. When he's a guest on a podcast, he will say, you can reach me at construction.accountant or g+f.com. And on there, you can book a call with me. Now, he came up with that like vanity URL, construction.accountant, because that perfectly describes what he is. He's a construction accountant. You can't misspell those. Like you probably know how to spell construction and you probably know how to spell accountant. So there's no confusion with like, oh, how do I spell that? And then he also gives his company site G+F. They both go to the same place, but he gives those 2 URLs. So simply go to my website, book a call, and I'll show up. He's gotten a ton of leads and sales that way. Dina Patton, she's a business coach and an author and a speaker. She's one of our biggest cheerleaders because has such a great return on investment from podcast guesting. She's closing consistent like $10,000 to $20,000 a month in recurring revenue from her appearing on podcasts. And her call to action is sending people to her website. She says, my website is the easiest way to get in touch with me. DinaPatton.com, DENAPATTON. So she spells it out just to make sure nobody misspells it and goes to the wrong site. And then she says, if you need help with this, meaning anything she's talked about in the interview, schedule a call and let's chat. And then my book is on the website as well, DinaPatton.com. And she says the URL again. So it's not just what the call to action is, which a lot of the times is just going to your website, but it's also how you deliver the call to action. So I want you to write that down. It's not just what the call to action is, but it's how you deliver the call to action. Because if she's like, oh yeah, like go to my website, DinaPatton.com. Okay, like what am I going to get there? She's telling you, you can book a call with me. You can get my book. She's telling me how to spell her name so I don't like get confused. So how you deliver it and what you're saying are two really important parts of the process. A question in the chat, when you say ROI, what are you assuming the investment is? So the return on investment is whatever for what I'm referencing with our clients here, it's what they invested in our service as a booking agency. So if you're curious what it looks like to work with us and to invest in having us book you on podcasts, you can schedule a call at interviewconnections.com/call. Vernie will put the link in the chat. We have a membership option. We have membership options where you can work with us month to month and get booked on a guaranteed number of podcasts each month. All right. So that was the audience of the podcast. Now we're going to get into the third way that you can get clients from podcast guesting, which is your own audience. Okay. You all have clients, future clients already following you. I know you're here to learn about visibility, to get in front of other people's audiences, to grow your audience, and to get more leads and sales. But it's very important to me that you know you already have future clients who are already following you, who are already on your email list. And I talk to entrepreneurs all the time who are like, yeah, I have an email list. It's small. None of them they're all tire kickers. None of them are going to work with me. You never know. If you start sending people on your email list your podcast appearances, you will be shocked at how many of them start saying, oh my gosh, I've been following you for so long and I just heard you on a podcast and now I want to work with you. They may just need longer form content to listen to with you in order to get to the point of saying, yes, I want to work with you. Like our client, Lauren Elise Rogers, she is a relationship coach. Her Instagram is at Sex Ed for You. And she's got a big Instagram following. She has a big audience, like a significant size audience on social media on her email list. And after she started working with us and getting on other people's podcasts, what she did, write this down because this is a genius tip. She took all of her podcast appearances and made a playlist on Spotify. So you can make a playlist on Spotify of a bunch of different podcast episodes. So she took all of her podcast episodes as a guest and she made a playlist. And then she put that playlist in her Instagram bio. So now she has people who follow her on Instagram. Now they're listening to her on other people's podcasts, and they are booking calls with her and investing in her coaching program. They didn't find her because she was a guest on a podcast. They've already been following her. And then when she shared her interviews on other people's shows with her audience, they started listening and it moved the needle. It moved them down the funnel and converted them into a client. Right? We all know what a marketing funnel is. They come in through the top, they go all the way down. You have a lot of leads in the middle of your funnel that are just stuck. But if you start sending podcast interviews that you've done on other people's shows, it'll like unclog your marketing funnel and it'll move people down to the bottom. All right. So this is a really important part of this strategy. Your own audience is hearing you speak from the perspective of you speaking to them, right? Like you are writing content, you are making videos, but when they hear you on somebody else's podcast, they hear you in a different context. They hear a host edifying you when that host introduces you to their audience. So by sharing your podcast appearances with your audience is now hearing you in a different context. They're seeing you as the guest expert celebrity that you are, but they don't see that unless you share those interviews with them. So the way you can do this and leverage this part of the strategy is repurpose your interviews into content. So like I said, with the Spotify playlist, make a Spotify playlist, put that in your Instagram bio, share your interviews in your stories and on social media. Also, you can take your podcast interviews and repurpose them into clips. So a lot of interviews on podcasts are video. And so you can take the video and edit up little 30-second, 60-second clips that you can upload as a reel on Instagram or as a TikTok or just put a short form video on LinkedIn. And this is something that we do that's included in our membership at Interview Connections. We'll do that for you. So you don't have to worry about it. We'll just repurpose your interviews for you. And you post those so that way people in your audience are now seeing you as a guest. Our client, Christina, who's going to be speaking on Thursday's session, she started with us like she was coming out of a corporate career, building up her hypnotherapy and coaching business. And before any of her podcast interviews actually were published, she posted that she was getting interviewed on podcasts and somebody hired her as a speaker at their retreat. And then she also got a coaching client because they saw one of her clips being interviewed, like a short clip of her being interviewed. And that was all they needed. Like 30 seconds of watching her be interviewed on a podcast in a little video clip. It was just like, it was an intuitive buyer that just knew it was the correct fit and reached out and became her client. So yes, the long form content of podcasts is super powerful. And also the short form, sometimes that's all people need. Sometimes the one thing you say in that clip is what moves the needle for them. So leverage these interviews, repurpose them with your own audience. You can also use your podcast interviews in the sales process. Like we have a client named Mike Maynard who runs a 7-figure marketing and PR firm, and he has enterprise level clients. So he'll have like a year-long sales cycle with a big enterprise level client where there's proposals and RFPs and like it's a big, long process. And so what he'll do is he'll nurture those leads over the course of that year-long sales cycle with podcast appearances so that his company doesn't just look like any other marketing firm. He wants to make sure that his potential clients see his company as the authority, which is a huge differentiator. When you start promoting the fact that you're a podcast guest to your audience, they now see you as an authority figure and not just somebody that has a service for them to for them to invest in. All right. So yeah, share your interview links with your email list as well. Put them up on your website, on your media page. So that way, when people find you on Google or maybe somebody, refers business to you, when that referral goes to your website, they can see that you're a guest on podcasts and listen to you. So tell me, as we go into this next section, what is your favorite tip so far? What are you going to implement right away? Maybe you have a podcast on your calendar this week. Like, what are you going to implement from what I've shared with you? Because so much of this is actionable, implement it today advice. And I want to hear, what are you going to implement in your business right now from what we talked about today? Put it in the chat. David is going to start repurposing his interviews. I love it. Repacking my existing podcast content. Yes. Identifying the right podcast. Yes, you definitely want to be targeted and specific. The playlist is brilliant. Honestly, it's so brilliant. I learned so much from our clients. Like I teach this and then we get people booked and they come up with ideas and they tell us and then I get to tell other people. Like it's so great. That's why I also host a mastermind call for our clients, because there's just so much brilliance that comes out of masterminding. Okay, I love your takeaways. Now, there's only a few things you need to have in place for podcast guesting to work in your business. You need to have clarity on who your target audience is so that you know the right types of shows to be booked on. You need to have an offer. Obviously, you need to have a business with something to sell if you want to see a return on your investment. And you need a way to bring them from, bring people from somebody else's audience into your audience. So, having a website, having some place for people to schedule a call with you. So it's very simple. You don't need a lot in place. If you're an established business owner, you've got a place online to send people to. All you need to do is start speaking on podcasts, and that's the way you're going to grow your audience. So don't overthink this. You don't need like complex marketing funnels, and it's just about getting out on podcasts. It's simple. It's just building your network and speaking. So if you are ready to get clients from podcast guesting, you're excited, you are like, no, I want to implement this, but I'm not booked on any podcasts yet. That's what we can do for you. So Interview Connections offers a monthly membership option. We have 3 different tiers where you get booked on a guaranteed number of podcasts every month. We'll also repurpose all of your interviews for you. So it's totally done for you. We'll support you and give you the guidance you need to monetize your interviews. And we've been doing this for 12 years. We were the first podcast booking agency in the world. So we absolutely know what we're doing. And we've got tons of case studies and success stories. So this is only the beginning of the masterclass. But if you are really excited and you want to put this into action right away, book a consultation call at interviewconnections.com/call. You can see some of our different membership options. Again, it's a month-to-month membership. You can cancel anytime. So super low risk, but we're going to get you incredible results. So this becomes a marketing strategy you never want to stop. So tomorrow is session 2. We are going to talk about the art of being an unforgettable podcast guest. So don't miss that session. Same Zoom link, same time. And then replays will be sent out each day. You'll have access to the recordings until Friday, December 19th. So you have a full 2 weeks to catch this masterclass. Again, if you're ready to implement, you want to learn about our membership, go to interviewconnections.com/call to book a consultation call. And then I just want you to tell me in the chat, what was your favorite tip from today? What are you excited to implement when you start getting booked on podcasts? I would just love to see your takeaways from today's session. Just get started. Honestly, Dr. Janet, that's my favorite because you've got to implement. The reason I give so many actionable tips is because I think a lot of free masterclasses are full of like, you're probably not surprised that like a lot of webinars, people get on and you're like, great. So now I know why podcast guesting is great. But I'm going to tell you why it's great, but I'm also going to tell you dozens of ways that you can like actionable tips. So you have to be in implementation. You have to be in action in order to see a result from this strategy. So love it. I'm excited to build relationships with other podcasters. Yes, there's such amazing people to build relationships with because they're so well connected. Kim says, I didn't really know how to get started, and this really helped. Yes, get started. Just take the first step. Kim, you've already had that call with me, so you're already in the right place. Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for being here. This was awesome. I will see you back here tomorrow for session 2. Same Zoom link, same time. See you then.